There we go.
Good morning, LinkedIn. Sorry, there was a bit of a delay there while I was waiting to see if we'd gone live. So I'm Mel Johnson. I am a social media and email marketing consultant. So I help businesses navigate the murky world of content marketing and define their messages and get them out there in a way that doesn't take up all their time, money and valuable resource. And I am here this morning with Mo Kanjalal, who I'll hand over to introduce herself in a moment, to talk about how to build a strong personal brand without being too personal, because Mo is a huge advocate of personal branding, but she does it in a way that's kind of friendly, professional, and doesn't kind of, I guess, overstep the mark of being too personal, which we'll talk about because I've just discovered a whole heap of things I didn't know about Mo. But if anybody's watching, do pop any questions you have in the content, comments, or give us a wave and say hi. So Mo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. So I'm Mo Kanjalal. I'm a diversity, equity and inclusion leader, and I've been working in this space for 5 years. And before that, I had a long career in technology corporations where I led big teams of people in big tech companies where not many people looked or sounded like me. And I'm also a co-author of a book behind me. And I'm a speaker, and I did a TEDx talk in 2024.
Excellent. So, well, you can share, do you want to pop your link to the TEDx talk in the comments, because it's great and everybody should watch it. So I think for us, I mean, what I see is you know, there's this increased focus on personal branding for leadership teams and also for individuals and people starting out on their business journey. But I feel that when I, certainly from personal experience, and when I go out and speak to people, you know, it's like this, people I think struggle with the term personal branding because it feels quite personal. But actually all it really is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And we all have a personal brand. And actually, I think sometimes we all have slightly different personal brands depending on who we are and who we're with. So for like me, I'm a mum, and I think perhaps my personal brand amongst the mums at school is probably different to how it is amongst people like us. But I feel like there's quite a lot of, I guess, there's a lot of concern about like confusion and concern about what people might want to, you know, what to say. They don't want to overstep the mark. Obviously, if you work in certain industries, you have to be quite careful about what you say as well. But it's just so important. So Mo, do you want to kind of just talk to me about what you sort of feel like personal branding is and how you kind of you sort of manage yours, if you like, without kind of going into...
So I struggled with it a lot, actually, the term personal brand for a long time, because it felt a bit weird to say that I'm a brand until I really kind of delved into the fact that it's true. Everybody has a personal brand. That's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
And when I worked in corporate roles, it was very different because I was a very different person at work, the person out of work. I was different to everyone I worked with. I was viewed as Mo, the weird one that lives in Brighton, because I didn't fit the traditional, you know, man in a grey suit with 2.4 children and a house in the suburbs. Like, that wasn't me. So I was very different. So I did have a kind of personal brand at work that was a bit strange, a bit different. I sort of reveled in it. I remember I got some advice from somebody who was my manager quite early on, who said, look, Mo, you're in an industry where there's nobody like you. Everybody is a man in a dark suit. So you're already different. So you might as well be really different. Why don't you just wear bright colours, and then people will remember who you are? And that's kind of been my trademark since then. I wear really brightly coloured dresses and patterns so people know that's what I do. So that's been part of my personal brand, doing that kind of thing. And then there's my name. So my name isn't Mo, it's Moshami. But when I was a child at school, I grew up in an area that was completely white. I was the only brown girl in my class. Teachers, when I was very young, I think I was 5, when a teacher said, we can't say your name, so we're going to shorten it. So they shortened it, and that's what I've used ever since. And then, you know, as I've continued, people have said to me, why don't you change your full name? It's like, yeah, but then I'd have to spend my whole day spelling my name, which I already have to do. And it's really dull. And people that can say words like Tchaikovsky pretend they can't say my name. And it's really frustrating. So I thought, I just can't be bothered. So my name isn't Mo. I'm actually Moshami, and my friends and family often call me that right over Mo. But that's kind of part of my personal brand as well. And then in terms of what you portray sort of on social media and things like that, it depends what you do. So when I worked in corporate roles, you had to be careful about what you said online. Like we didn't have rules as such, but it was very much like if you're going to state opinions about things, you need to say that's your personal opinion. Then when you start working for yourself, I think it's different. I think you can bring more of your personality out. But I also have a couple of board roles. So I have a non-exec role and a charity trustee role. So I do have to think about that when I'm saying things online and kind of saying this, you are representing those brands as well. So I think there's different facets to it and different ways in which you bring out what you want to. And I think you have to just think about what you want people to know about. What do you want to be known for?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. And there's an exercise I do with people, but just going back to being careful about what you say. And I think that's sometimes the fear of people overstepping the mark is that I remember, I don't know if she's watching, somebody a copywriter I work with sharing a story about, that mushroom extract tea.
Yeah.
She put, oh, I took this tea and the last time I did mushrooms was at a festival in 2008 or something along those lines. And I was really laughing, but I thought, one of my clients is a conformity assessment body. Like I wouldn't really share that type of information because of the type of clients that I work with, because obviously if you're a lawyer, you're not going to talk about the fact that you did at Glastonbury, shall we say, because it's probably not appropriate. But I think I hear people saying, I know I need to be a bit more personal online, but I don't want to talk about what I had for breakfast, or I don't want to talk about my children. And sometimes actually people don't want to talk about something that's happened in their past that's can be quite triggering, particularly if it's kind of, something that's happened to you professionally. So I think for me, it's really about like really honing in on what you care about, what your values are. Because I think particularly when you run your own business, but also as a leader, your values are really kind of like all of our values are integral to us, and that quite often intersects that kind of personal and professional. But I think one of the things is really key. I mean, I think I put it in the blurb here, like 30% of corporate businesses and the fastest growing ones are kind of investing in their senior leadership and sales teams' personal brand. And I think, I did, obviously we both have a sales background. I did sales for 12 years, and I think it's very, very different now. This was the old days where you used to pick up the phone and people might actually answer their desk phone, which obviously is never going to happen now. But I just feel like it's much easier to create warmer leads if you have that personal brand. And you're not going to be for everybody. That's absolutely fine. I mean, if you look at like a lot of Elon Musk and Jeffrey Bezos are probably not the best examples, but everybody knows who they are and what they stand for. Whether or not that's damaging to their business is, unfortunate. And obviously you don't have to be like them, but it's really about, I think, thinking about what are your values and what you care about. And that also helps you to attract more of the clients that you want to work with.
Yeah,
it makes
definitely.
Sale easier.
So for me, I know that I am not everyone's cup of tea, and I don't want to be. There are people that don't want to work with me. It's true. There are people that don't want to work with me. I did a talk about this on Monday, actually. I'm too much for a lot of people. Too opinionated, too loud, too this, too that, yawn. Okay, if I'm too much for you, that's fine. I'm not the person to work with. And I'm very aware of that. And I think probably when I was younger, I would have struggled with that concept that not everyone's going to like me. And as you get older, you grow into it, don't you? You think, well, that's fine, actually. I will also work with people that I want to work with, and it goes both ways. And I think you do have to think about that. Like, what do you want to stand for? Because if you want to do this thing called building a personal brand, what's that going to be about? What you're putting out there and saying about yourself. And it's so interesting about the sales discussion, because like you say, before we went to sales, it was very different. I think now people really do look at the person and the relationship, and so many things have happened to me through connections on LinkedIn where sometimes people haven't met in person, and then you eventually meet them in person and you're a bit starstruck because you've known them online for a long time.
And I feel that, but also I think there's the other kind of angle from a leadership perspective is that you actually, it's a really good recruitment tool. Because let's say, I think, and even as somebody who's just starting out in your career, like building that personal brand is going to open up opportunities for you, because people will say, oh, actually, I know you, I know what you stand for, I know that you kind of align with our company's values. But also as a leader, you want to attract the best possible talent. And particularly in, it's difficult to recruit at the moment, as far as I know. And I think actually, if you've got if people within your organisation who are, showing off your brand in the right way, then you're going to attract the right caliber of people and the type of people that you absolutely want to work with. So it's just a kind of absolutely no-brainer, really.
I think it's key. We work with a lot of companies where they're struggling to recruit or struggling to recruit different types of people, and we'll always look at what they're doing on social media, and often people are quite quick to dismiss it, and they'll say, "Oh no, it's down to the company, it's down to the marketing team to put things down." It's like, it's not actually. It's down to you as a leader, because that's what people look at. So if someone's got an interview coming up with somebody, they will look up that person and see what that person is posting, and what they stand for, and it really is about that. And a lot of people now, there's a lot of talk about this. It often gets talked about that it's younger people, but actually I think it's all people want to work for organisations where they believe in the cause, they believe in what that organisation stands for. And that isn't just the organisation, that is the people in it too. They want to know that they're going to work with people where there's a connection and the same values, shared values.
Yeah, and I think that's really key. I think what you've just touched upon there is, there is still, it's a job of a marketing department, and I know Beth and some other people watching, absolutely, and actually, but that can only go so far. But also, so I think, and I see within organisations is that we need to kind of empower your leaders or your salespeople, and the people, I don't want to do that. It's just another thing for me to do. But it's actually, so it's kind of, and I ran a workshop on this last year actually, where it was, the guy came to me and he said, I just want my team to build a personal brand and feel a bit more comfortable about using LinkedIn. And he said, because it's not, I know that they're probably all going to leave, but I think this is good for their career development. So we booked this workshop in for a Friday morning, and it was online, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get these people to engage online in a workshop where their boss has gone, you need to go to this on Friday. And actually it was really good. And I think the majority of them are still posting. I see them posting LinkedIn still like 2-3 times a week, and I guess kind of building their personal brand. But I think it's understanding what that means, and how that kind of, but I think also some people are concerned that it doesn't align with their company's values, or there's that kind, sometimes that feeling, well, I'm just promoting the company, like what's in it for me. But so I think it's kind of doing that piece of work where you look at what your values are and what you stand for, and how that aligns with the work you do. And actually, if you're I know you see your TEDx talk and you do a lot of speaking, and actually that's all showcasing Mo, which is then beneficial to your business and the work you do as well. So that kind of really intersects, but I feel like people are really concerned about what they're going to say. And so I think there's just some things that I've got. So it's really, I think, really working out the clarity. So what do you stand for? So really simple, like, just start with writing down like what your values are. But also I think there's another way of looking at it, is to actually almost write down exactly what you don't want to talk about. So if you're like, apps, I really don't want to talk about my children online. Just kind of, ditch all of the stuff that you don't want to talk about, write that all down, and then just remove it and think, actually, what are the things that I can focus on? And sometimes it might only be 10% of what you do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you can decide what you want to share. I definitely decide what I do and don't want to share. And I often get comments from people when I meet them, they say, oh, but you're always on LinkedIn, when do you do any work? And it's like, oh, that's an illusion as well. So for me, I think about, if I think about a post, I just put it in draft and schedule it, and sometimes go back to it and edit it, but I just put them in there so I have things ready. So I'm not doing it all the time. And then in terms of like commenting, liking and sharing, a lot of that, I have certain times in the day that I'll do that, but a lot of it is actually on the bus or on a train. And that's when I do that kind of thing. So it might seem like I'm always on it, but I'm actually not. And I think that's true of a lot of people. What you perceive may not actually be the case. And I think you can decide what you want to share and what you don't. So I don't share like what I'm doing every weekend, for example. I very rarely share anything like that because I don't feel like that's relevant content unless there's something like really, if I'm going to something that an event that I feel like is relevant to the work I do, then I might share that. But otherwise I don't. So I pick and choose what I'm going to share.
I think it's really interesting that you picked up the point you picked up. It's like you're always in LinkedIn. So I think that there's a couple of things here, and I know we've got some LinkedIn experts watching. So Beth just said LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for employee and leaders, and Marianne Avery has come in, and I hope I did get your name right, has come in and said, I'm loving your conversation, Mo. No one can spell my name. I get called all different things and tend to go by Maz for simplicity. So I tend to go by Mel, but actually that's a preference rather than but some people do call me Melanie, and then I feel very weird, like I'm getting told off. But I just wanted to pick up about, you said people saying you're always on LinkedIn. So I think firstly there's of course, the more people engage with your post, the more likely they are to see content from you. But I remember in lockdown, when we went into lockdown, which I was not a fan of, because I get my energy from people. So I can't imagine you were much of a fan of a lockdown either, were you, Mo?
I wasn't. I did a lot of online stuff because I also get my energy from people. So I think the early bit I was okay with, and then by the time it was dragging on, I'd had enough.
I think the January one was the worst.
Oh yeah.
But I remember, and at the time I was spending a lot of time on Instagram because my business was like different. And I remember thinking, there was two people in particular, I'm not going to name anyone. My goodness, how are they on social media all the time? Like actually, to be honest, I think I was on social media quite a lot. They seem to always be there, and they're saying, oh, have a free conversation with me, and they're giving, and I remember thinking, oh my God. And then we were out for a walk one day, and I remember thinking, like, my kids are at home. My husband was, he wasn't furloughed. He was working full time. And I remember thinking, like, how on earth are they online all the time? And then suddenly I was out walking, and I suddenly went, I don't think they've got any work. And I think that's the kind of perception, isn't it, on social media, that you see people on there and they're like, oh wow, they look really busy, and actually quite often the reason they're on there is because they're perhaps not so busy.
Yeah, I think, especially during that time, I think that was true. And then I sometimes meet people who will turn their nose up at social media and they say, oh yeah, what are you doing that for? And I say, well, there's a simple reason. It's because that's how I've grown the work I do. It's through all of the amazing connections that I've made. So yes, I know there's loads of evils of social media, but I do think there are real benefits to it too. And so I've met so many people through social media.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, I think we all, I think there's obviously it's kind of outside what we're talking about, but I feel like it's that understanding of, yes, there are positives. Of course, sometimes we all see things that we don't dislike in our newsfeed, and I think as a mum, I obviously have a bit of a different opinion about certain social media platforms. But there's a lot of people doing great stuff out there. I mean, Kaya is a great example who works with you, but also we do have a choice about who we follow and who we interact with.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes if you're seeing something that's kind of triggering or it's not your thing, just unfollow it, just disengage with it. We don't have to be connected with all the time. And I think it's around sort of going back to what you're saying about being really intentional with your time.
Yeah.
So not getting sort of sucked into not getting sucked into kind of the algorithm and sort of looking on there all the time.
I was going to say, great comment there from Beth about the power of LinkedIn being underrated. I think that's so true. So there's so many people I've spoken to who are leaders who say, oh no, I haven't got time for all that. And you're like, but people really buy from people. They really,
they do.
Not just buying, want to partner with organizations where they really understand a leader. And there are loads of great people I follow on LinkedIn, great charity leaders and things like that, who it's the power of their personal brand being out there and their stories that really makes people want to connect with them.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's a great point from Beth. And I feel like it's particularly in certain industries, I think there's a real sort of education piece that needs to be done around actually, like, why is this kind of I suppose calling it professional brands maybe feels a bit more like resonates better with some people. is actually, you know, it's not about oversharing. You know, if you're a senior leader within an organization, yes, you have, you're probably within that organization for a reason. You know, and you have you know, things within your company that are different and that make you stand out. And actually, you know, you might be selling coconuts. I don't know where that example came from. But actually, you know, if you've got that really good work culture, or you give away 10% of your profits to charity, for example, those are the things that you need to be talking about, because that demonstrates value.
Yeah.
And you know, and I mean, you know, it's not personal, but if you look at HP, their marketing, they sell laptops, but they don't talk about laptops. They talk about the fact that they're made from recycled plastic.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I think it's
how you put a message out there.
Yeah.
And I've just seen a great comment from Helen, hello Helen, about never sure how much to post on LinkedIn about what you do outside of work. And I think that's so interesting. So the people that comment the LinkedIn isn't Facebook and try and police other people's content, I tend to disconnect from people that do that, because I think, well, you have a choice about who you follow. If you don't like what I'm posting, don't follow me. It's very simple. So I don't really go there with that. But in terms of what you share, I'd say for me, I thought about this because I knew we had this conversation coming up. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I went to see a play in London with a friend, and it was a play based on the book by Satnam Sanghera called Marriage Material, and it's all about, it's about British Asian culture.
He's like my husband is like, you love him more than me.
I know, I'm a real fangirl too.
I'm obsessed.
That play was about British Asian culture. It's very connected to the work I do. It's about the fact that there's a very unique experience if you've grown up as a British Asian. I went with a friend of mine who's a white friend, and I had to explain to her a term that they use in it. It's called Gora, which is basically not a very nice term for white people. And it was quite, you know, it was like it was an entertaining evening, but also very connected to my work. So something like that, I feel like is great to share. Yeah. But I wouldn't share, I don't know, a camping trip that I'm going on or something like that. I don't feel like that's something I need to put out there. But I might put that on Instagram. So it depends what you're doing, I think. I think it's all
it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, and I mean, like, I'm going to use Beth as a prime example here. She's because she's watching, but Beth's really into running and like the outdoors, and she does kind of showcase those things on LinkedIn really well, because they're part of her like personality and the things that she values. But again, she doesn't. Sorry, Beth, I'm picking you up. She's going to tell me off, but you know, again, it's not really talking, you know, as she said, being personable rather than personal.
Yeah,
I think is the absolute key.
It depends what you do. So, for example, that play example, or I went to the Charleston Literary Festival. Those things are then examples that I will use in the work I do about reading different types of books and, like, you know, understanding different cultures and things like that. So it's very connected to what I do. So I think that's the thing to think about is what you want to put out there. And it's a total personal choice as well of what you want to put out there. But it really is. So, for example, it was Father's Day on whenever it was, Sunday. So on Instagram, I wasn't going to share anything. My dad passed away a few years ago. And I thought, actually, he always used to just turn his nose up at it. He thought it was nonsense. He used to say, oh, it's just to make people buy cars. And I was like, actually, that's quite a nice thing to share. So I shared a story about that. But I wouldn't have put that on LinkedIn. Like, that was something I felt like it was a real Instagram kind of post.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like that's something I'd have put out there on LinkedIn. But that's, you know, that's my choice as to what I'm choosing to put out there. And I think everyone has that choice. And what I don't like is the people that try and police other people, that, you know, this isn't for LinkedIn, or why are you saying this? I just think, like, who are you that you think you can tell me what I should and shouldn't post?
Well, exactly. Yeah, I think that. So I think for anybody who's watching, and I think actually there's a few people who are quite good at managing the personable over personal. But we've talked about, like, I kind of think, just first of all, just literally write down all of the things that you perhaps don't want to talk about. I mean, I had a really bad experience when I left my corporate career, and it was 10 years ago in September, and I still can't really talk about it without feeling quite emotional.
Yeah.
So I don't talk about that on social media, because I don't really want to open up conversations around that, because it's quite triggering to me, and that's just kind of like one example. But I think, you know, if for somebody who's looking to start out, I would say just you know, start really simply. So, you know, write down 3 to 5 words that are common to you or that other people might say about you, and then actually 10 things you're really good at. So it might be, it could, and it doesn't have to always be work related. It could be like, I'm an amazing cook, or I've done 5,000 park runs, or something like that. And then think, you know, write about things that you care about and inspire you, and all of those things. You can then kind of look at that and think about, actually, what are the topics that I'm going to talk about. So I'm, you know, it may be that you're a really big advocate for women's health, like better promotion of women's health in the workplace, or you know, you really care about empowering people who are just starting out in the world of work. There's all, you know, all of those different things. Or, you know, but every Sunday you love cooking big meals for friends and family. So you know, there's lots of different things. And I think once, and I would say to people, it's like, it's almost like what you're comfortable with, but actually testing the water. And it does get so much easier as time goes on, and becomes something that you sort of, I don't want to say care less about, but it becomes easier.
Definitely does. And for me, I like those posts when people, perhaps they're new to it or they haven't introduced themselves for a while, and they say, like, here's 3 things about me. I like things like that because I'm really interested in people. It's why I enjoy being in sales. I'm really interested in other people. So for me, I like things like that. But then I've seen other people get policed for that sort of post. And I think, well, actually, I find that sort of thing interesting. It might make me want to actually reach out and connect with somebody and like strike up a conversation with them over things like that.
Yeah, I mean, one of my, actually with a few of my clients, it's like because a lot of them tend to be older, and you know, they don't really, they're leaders, but they don't really like the whole kind of personal stuff. It's all seen as a bit modern. And every month in our, so one of them we do a monthly newsletter, and we always do sort of like a personal bit about one of them. And so one of them I found out is obsessed with tandem cycling and has got a tandem cycle and goes all over Europe. And then one of the other guys told me that he was, when he was 16 in the 70s, growing up in Cardiff, he got asked to go on tour with a rock band. And he said, no, because I want to be a geologist. And he's always wondered. But that type of content is, if we put that on the email subject, the open rates go like absolute through the roof, because that's the real connection. That's the talking point. You know, people love a good story. And I think some people are like, you know, I think also sometimes with personal branding, people feel a bit like, I don't have a massive hero story. You know,
you don't have to.
No, you don't. Yeah, you don't, because we all have our unique stories, and I think that's what makes us interesting. But I think sometimes, because you know, you read, people are like, oh, you know, I had really like a health problem or something really bad happens in my life, and it was kind of like a pinnacle moment for me, and that's sort of, then I changed my career, or I decided to start championing that. And I think sometimes people feel like they're not that interesting because they don't have that.
Yeah, but everyone's got a story. So I think I told you about my cousin who's written a book called What's in a Name. And it's because when she was teaching, she used to use that as the icebreaker, ask people what their name is and whether their name has any significance. And actually, everybody has a story about their name. However simple it is, it might be a really in-depth story, or it might be something really simple. It's a really good conversation starter with people. And that's the kind of thing that's interesting to share. I think I love reading about things like that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, we love people. Anyway, we're coming up to 30 minutes.
Already.
No, I know. Let's chat all day. But thank you so much for joining me. There's lots of comments here. So I am going to have a little go through and respond to some of them after this. But Mo, do you want to well, I guess as we're ending, do you want to tell people how they can get in contact with you, or a bit more, and share your TEDx talk, of course?
Yeah, can I add a link here? Can't see how to do that anyway.
Yeah, we'll do it.
We could do it after, yeah. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. Mo Canjilal, exactly as you see on the screen. MO and then space KANJILAL. That is the best place to find me. On Instagram, I use Mo Canjilal Williams, which is my married name, just because I've chosen to do that there. So you can find me there as well. But usually, if you search Mo Canjilal, I'm usually the only one, so you'll be able to find me.
Cool. Yeah, and I will post my link in the chat. But I'm Mel Dodson, and I'm not that easy to find actually on LinkedIn because I have a very common name. But yeah, I'll put my website in the chat. And thank you so much for joining us, Mo, and everybody else. And I hope everybody enjoys the sunshine over the weekend.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to getting off this call so I can put my fan back on.
Yes, me too. Have lovely
because I'm getting hotter and hotter.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.